I never imagined I'd be the reason someone ended up in legal trouble over a neighborhood dispute. But when it comes to my dog, Max, I don't play around. I've been living in Oakwood Heights for about 3 years now. It's your typical suburban community. Trimmed hedges, friendly block parties in the summer, and, unfortunately, the most power-hungry HOA in the county. At the helm, Patricia Wilkins. But around here, everyone just calls her Karen, and not affectionately. From the moment I moved in, she made it her personal mission to enforce every single HOA rule like she was leading a military operation. One day it was, your garbage bin is visible from the street. The next, your Christmas lights were up 3 days past the deadline. I even caught her one standing in my yard, uninvited, holding a tape measure up to my fence and informing me that the beige I used was Newport sand, not the HOA-approved coastal dune. All delivered with that signature tight smile and a clipboard glued to her hand. Now, I work from home as a software engineer, so I've gotten really good at keeping a polite smile on the outside while internally rolling my eyes. I've always been a choose-your-battles kind of guy, so I usually comply just to keep the peace. That worked until she went after Max. Max is my 3-year-old German Shepherd. He's sharp, loyal, and honestly the best decision I ever made post-divorce. I rescued him from a shelter, and since then, he's been my shadow. My yard is fully enclosed with a 6-foot privacy fence I had professionally installed. Of course, I got HOA approval before building it. Because when you live under someone like Karen, you have to do everything by the book. Then came that Tuesday in June, the day everything changed. I was in the middle of a critical client video call when I noticed a familiar shadow pass by my office window. Karen. No surprise there. I figured she was up to her usual nonsense. Maybe documenting that my hose wasn't perfectly coiled, or counting dandelions in my lawn. Max was out back, soaking the sun, just like always. But about 10 minutes into my meeting, I heard his bark. Not his Amazon package bark, his panic bark. The kind I'd only heard once before, during a thunderstorm. I instantly muted my call and rushed to the back door. And what I saw nearly stopped my heart. The gate wide open. Max gone. I bolted into the yard and then out into the street, yelling his name. My heart was racing. Thankfully, he hadn't gone far. He was circling back toward the driveway, confused but unharmed. I scooped him up and got him inside, locking the gate behind us as my mind flooded with every terrifying possibility. He could have been hit by a car, been someone who's scared, or just vanished forever. Then I remembered the cameras. A while back, after Karen took it upon herself to trim branches from my oak tree, claiming they were encroaching on community space, I'd installed a full security system. Best decision I ever made. I pulled up the footage and watched in disbelief. There she was, clear as day, floral capri pants. That overly bleached bob she swears makes her look younger. Karen, marching right up to my gate, unlatching it without hesitation, and swinging it wide open. Then she turned, smirked, and strolled away like she hadn't just put my dog's life and my sanity at risk. This wasn't a petty HOA nitpick anymore. This was personal and dangerous. This wasn't just some petty HOA drama or a nosy neighbor sticking her nose where it didn't belong. This was something far more serious. Karen had knowingly endangered my dog. That wasn't just rude. It was dangerous and possibly criminal. I took a few moments to calm down, wrapped up my client meeting as professionally as I could, and then returned to the footage. I re-watched it again and again just to be sure I wasn't overreacting. But every time it was undeniable. Karen had come onto my property, unlatched my gate, and left it wide open. Max could have been hurt, or worse. I knew confronting her would lead nowhere. Karen was the queen of victimhood. She'd twist the whole thing into some delusional narrative about protecting the community. So instead, I called a non-emergency police line to file a formal report. When the officer arrived, I could see the skepticism on his face. Until I played him the footage, his entire demeanor shifted. "Sir, this is actually pretty serious," he said, eyebrows raised. "We're talking potential criminal trespassing, property interference, animal endangerment, and, if we stretch it, even attempted theft. Would you like to press charges?" I'd never had to press charges before, but this wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. If I didn't draw a line here, what would she try next? Yes, I replied without hesitation. I want to press charges. The officer took detailed notes, copied the security footage onto a USB drive, and promised to follow up. I braced myself for a slow legal slog, but what happened next completely took me by surprise. The very next morning, I was sipping coffee and replying to emails when I heard a disturbance outside. Curious, I peeked through the blinds and nearly dropped my mug. There on my front lawn was Karen, being led to a police cruiser in handcuffs. She was wearing her typical Wednesday power suit, a stiff navy ensemble with shiny gold buttons, probably on her way to a real estate job when the police came knocking. Her face twisted with disbelief and fury as neighbors stepped out onto their front lawns, staring in stunned silence. "This is absurd. I'm the HOA president," she shrieked. "That dog is aggressive. I was performing a safety inspection. Do you know who I am?" The officers didn't flinch. They calmly guided her into the back of the cruiser, her voice finally muffled as the door shut. I didn't feel smug or vengeful, just relieved. Max sat beside me at the window, tail wagging, blissfully unaware that his near miss had just landed our community's biggest tyrant in handcuffs. Later that day, I got a call from the police department. Karen had officially been charged with criminal trespassing, property damage, and animal endangerment. She had already made bail, but her court date was set for the following week. According to the officer, she was still claiming innocence, saying the gate was faulty and that she was merely performing her HOA duties. Naturally, word spread like wildfire. By that evening, my phone was buzzing with texts from neighbors, many of whom I'd barely spoken to before. They were reaching out with support, sharing their own Karen encounters, and thanking me for standing up. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who'd been steamrolled by her obsessive enforcement of HOA rules. Then Monday came, and with it, an official letter from the HOA board. I opened it cautiously, half expecting some ridiculous citation for causing a public disturbance. But instead, I was met with something shocking. Karen had been temporarily suspended from her position as HOA president, pending the outcome of her charges. And just like that, the reign of terror was beginning to crumble. Karen's court date arrived faster than I expected. A few days after receiving the HOA's official letter, which acknowledged that her actions were unauthorized and outside her role as president, I cleared my schedule, gathered my documentation, and headed to court. I didn't know if I'd be called to testify, but I wasn't going to take any chances. To my surprise, the courtroom was packed. I recognized several neighbors, and even a few of Karen's colleagues from her real estate office. Clearly, word had gotten out. Karen arrived looking tense but composed, dressed in one of her usual power suits. She had brought a high-end attorney with her, someone who looked like they charged by the minute. He launched into a passionate defense, claiming she had simply been fulfilling her HOA responsibilities, and even went so far as to say there had been numerous complaints about my dog, Max. That was a flat-out lie. But none of it mattered once the security footage played. The video didn't just tell the story, it proved it. Karen was seen clearly and deliberately unlatch the gate, opening it with an expression that could only be described as smug satisfaction. The courtroom fell silent. Even her lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, replayed the video twice. Then she turned to Karen with steely eyes. "Mrs. Wilkins," she said sharply, "the evidence directly contradicts your statement. You trespassed on private property without permission and created a dangerous situation that could have ended in tragedy. And as someone who holds a leadership role in this community, your behavior is particularly unacceptable." Karen's face paled. For the first time, I saw something besides arrogance in her expression. Fear. The verdict was swift and decisive. Guilty on all charges. Her sentence? A $2,000 fine, 100 hours of community service, 1 year of probation, and a restraining order barring her from coming within 50 feet of my property. She stood frozen as the judge read each part aloud, the weight of it sinking in with every word. But her punishment didn't end there. As we left the courtroom, I overheard a conversation between Karen and her boss, the owner of the real estate agency where she worked as a senior agent. His tone was hushed but furious. "This story's all over the local news. Patricia, we can't have a convicted agent representing our firm. We'll be reviewing your position immediately." Karen's perfectly applied makeup cracked as her expression twisted in disbelief. Clutching her designer handbag, she snapped, "This isn't over. That man and his beast of a dog never belonged in our neighborhood." But her boss had clearly had enough. "That attitude is exactly why you're in this position. Check your email. HR will be reaching out today." As I walked to my car, I felt my phone buzz. It was a message from the HOA vice president. The vote was in. Karen had been permanently removed from the board by unanimous decision. 3 years of her bullying and intimidation. Over. Just like that. As I glanced back toward the courthouse steps, I saw her. Karen stood motionless, phone still in hand, reading the same message I had just received. For a brief second, our eyes locked. The disbelief on her face was unmistakable. And the rage, well, that just confirmed what I already knew. Her reign was over, and it ended not with power, but with humiliation, consequences, and the very rules she once weaponized turning against her.